You probably already covered some of this in your previous discussions, haven't you? But what we're looking at now is some sort of real problems that are faced by people when they're wanting to do mobility, or they are actually doing mobility, and the ways in which people have approached that and got around those problems or addressed those kind of problems. So I don't know how you structured things previously in terms of looking separately at students and educators, or in terms of or whether anybody has got a particular experience. It might be quite good if somebody's got a particular experience, either in terms of hosting people coming in, or students that you've had going out, or you yourself have had experiences as the person being mobile. What are the kind of key problems that have come up?
Yeah, I was have to use the mic, right?
Yeah.
Is it on? We have problems sending students. When we were going to Japan, we went as a tourist visa, but the government in Japan found out, because we are sending students every year, so they check, and so no longer we can send students to companies, because they have to issue us a working visa, which take forever. Yeah, impossible. It's just impossible. So for us to be able to go to Japan with a tourist visa, we can only be sent to universities. So it's not really real life industry experience anymore. So when I went, still got an opportunity, but after the fifth, maybe seventh batch, the government found out, and they stopped students going to industry because of the visa. Yeah.
Same on the European side to Vietnam, especially to private companies.
For Europeans going to Vietnam, or the other way around?
Europe to Vietnam.
And
to private companies.
For education?
Even for education. And that was not the case 5 or 10 years ago.
Because it involved payment by the company. So the company are paying the students. So when it was payment, salary, it's considered as working. So to get a working visa.
Same when you from Bangladesh went to Vietnam, there were places you couldn't visit. Remember? Same.
One big problem is the accommodation, at least in Europe. Some cities, the prices are so expensive that it's difficult to find affordable places for accommodation.
But this can be considered when you are designing the grant. We got students from Malawi last year, and so we applied for sufficient funding, so we know what to pay, and so just applied for the program.
But some scholarships are limited.
Sometimes the scholarships they exist, and then they have to manage that money, those that took mobility, and then they have to find their accommodation. It's so expensive.
You're thinking of students, though, who come on their own funding, like sort of on short-term scholarships and things. Yeah.
Even if they receive Erasmus, scholarship, they have to find their accommodation. So the institution that receives the students, we have no obligation to find them accommodation. We can help them, but we don't have that obligation. And Lisbon, for instance, prices have been going up, and it creates a problem for those that we receive, the students.
My university charges quite steep overhead and bench fees to any incoming people. So it makes it almost impossible for me to host mobility students, even Erasmus students, because I have to cover all their bench fees and costs. And so it's a discouragement. I mean, at 67% overhead plus bench fees at over $100 US a day, I can't afford it.
They don't waive it when you have an MOU?
No. No, if you want to work at one of the marine stations or any sort of facilities provided by the university.
That's not stimulating
No, and it's very hard as well to organize courses and host courses at the university for the same reason.
The cheapest place where students or others that are doing mobility can stay is apartments or houses that belong to the universities. Those are affordable, but usually they are full.
Yeah, say in Ghent the same.
So I think funding is the main constraint for mobility funding or scholarship. And other than funding, some minor issues as like getting the food, because people of Asia and people of Europe, they are used to in different food and religious activities. So these are also some sort of problems, I think, for mobility program. Thank you.
Yeah, so that's a little bit more in terms of. Sorry, so that's a little bit more in terms of when students arrive somewhere, adapting to the local food, the local conditions, local culture. A bit more.
Yeah, they are adapting, but it takes times.
For the exchange program, for whether the tuition or other things, collaboration. Yeah, collaboration between.
No, but you speak louder.
Collaboration between two universities like the MOU is essential. So maybe in your university not allowing this, but other, if we have the MOU between two universities, they don't charge any tuition or other things. Yeah, that is normal. So I think here many institute and we need more collaboration between each other. First step, then mobility work will be easier. Thank you.
To me, I think a language is also a problem because many students in my country, of course, they want to expose or to learn overseas with more experience and to learn about the culture in Europe. But a big barrier for them is language, English. Of course, for communication is okay, but very difficult to get the score of a TOEFL or IELTS, something like that. It's very difficult for them to get it.
I think that actually speaks to what I was talking about earlier about being instructors being able to organize courses where they bring students from their own countries and or integrate them with students from Asian countries during the courses so that there's a language that takes down some of that language barrier. For instance, I was involved with a group from Myanmar that came to by being with other people from Myanmar, some of those issues about food and some of those issues about language were less important, and they could actually benefit from the instruction that was being provided because there was appropriate support, whereas I don't think any of those students would have come on their own.
But on what you were just mentioning, I think scholarship programs should also provide the funding for language. We often see that this is not included, and then the students arrive. Maybe they have passed the TOEFL test or whatever IELTS, but then the first months they really have a difficult time. And very often it is overlooked, but a 2-month or a 3-month financing of language training, I would highly recommend. It could make it much easier for the students also.
I think we have this kind of opportunity. We have the Goethe Institute, and those who are coming for a PhD, for example, they can go for 1 or 2 months to this Goethe Institute and even learning a bit of German. So this is, John mentioned in the morning the ranking of the European countries for student exchange, for mobility, and Spain and Germany were in the first 2 positions. So I know from Germany that we are providing a lot of support. It also, if it concerns languages, but I don't know how about in Spain. why so many students would like to go to Spain.
Is that statistic just on total numbers? Sorry, is that statistic on total numbers? Who presented that statistic? I can't remember. I think it was Jean. Okay, I just wondered because that could be the explanation that Spain and Germany have more people and more universities than some of the others, countries, and so that might perhaps have swayed those statistics. Because I was under the impression that, from a perspective, maybe not Erasmus per se, but in terms of just taking PhDs elsewhere, that countries such as Germany are less attractive because you need to have German in order to succeed. So I was a bit surprised by those statistics because I know students from Sweden who won't go to Germany because they feel like the language would be the barrier. But they would happily go study in Belgium or Netherlands because they feel like there they would be able to succeed in English. No, because I think we come back to this idea that language probably is a determining factor, and also just access for students to facilities and social activities. They're not going to be so interested in spending longer times on exchanges if they feel like they can't interact.
Well, sending abroad is one thing. UMT is also receiving students. The problem that we are having is our facility is Asia level. Yeah, that we Thailand student, Bangladesh student, Vietnam student may stay in our student dorm, but if we have students from Sweden, Japan, that is impossible. I mean, they will come and they may not return. Yeah, so we were accepting students from Japan, and there's no way they're going to stay in the dorm. So we already tell the top management to address these issues. So what we did was we put them in hotel. So there's budget and transportation. So more money needed, but we want them to come. Yeah, so that was one of our challenges in UMT. Yeah, our facility need to be upgraded, at least the dormitory. At least we have or water heater, as as simple as water heater. Yeah, because student dorms there's no water heater and they get cold. The water is cold.
I was thinking about when we want to go abroad, so the accommodation for there is very expensive for us to bear. But when they are coming here, it's the problems of the facilities.
And students today in Europe are not willing to live in the conditions we were accepting 20 and 30 years ago.
We had issues of security. It was a bad luck where the students of Japanese students, they ran a house like Airbnb, but not DB Airbnb homestay. And when they went for sampling for a few days, it got robbed. Oh yeah, and passport and money. Oh yes. So it will be safer if they stay inside, but it wasn't up to the grade. Yeah, so that's the challenge that we are having.
This is actually a challenge in Germany. We have a strong right-wing party, as you might know, and it's really. I'm planning to bring a student to a Black Soldier Fly company to east of Berlin, and they have a very strong community in electing this right-wing party. But these are very black people, of course. You can recognize them immediately. There were some cases already, and I'm really a bit scared to bring him for a month to this place. This is too stupid, but it's really reality in some places.
Very bad.
Yeah.
Another thing, so is based on my experience, I got a lot of gender bias, whereby they only give opportunity to men because it's involved with the outside activities. So they pretend don't want to bring women because women will make everything easier.
Oh.
They want to say Asian.
I think that may be a problem in Malaysia. I would say in Sweden less so.
Because of size, I think. You want to add something?
I want to share one experience in Japan. They in Japan they used to have the cultural exchange by hosting from the home. So foreign students need to stay local citizens, and they arrange it through city corporation. They announce that who are interested to invite foreign students to stay their home, and they apply to the city corporation. Then they send it to the universities. These are the people are interested to accept the foreign student for certain time, 1 week or 10 days. So the foreign student applied, and they stay in their home and exchange their culture and other things. So this might be one way to accommodate the European student in Asian countries.
It's a good way to integrate them.
Mm. Okay.
I think there's more benefit from that. Yeah.
Mm. What about access to information? Do you feel that people have got adequate access to information about both exchange opportunities, but also what to expect when they go on exchanges or on mobility of one sort or another? Or are there ways that could be improved, or any experiences on just basic information?
When mainly young people, when they really want to find something, they really find it in internet. Many times they complain that they are not well informed, but they can succeed. And that's true that there's many mobility programs that exist, and even for us are not so easy to manage. But the main ones, if the students they want to find, they can find it. They can find everything.
Change the topic just slightly, because a couple of people here at the table I know are from very international universities, and I would say Ghent in terms of the programs you have there. John, you also could speak to the programs at Stirling. I don't know about Lisbon because I don't know much about your institute, but some of you are coming from very international universities that attract a lot of foreign students. And I unfortunately come from a very different institute where it's not the case. And how do you start out to get your institute to think more broadly about foreign students?
It's a long process, but you have to motivate them, so keep repeating, and in my case, bring them over. I have brought several rectors of our university. I think 6 of the last rectors I have brought them to China, to Vietnam, to just a few weeks ago here to UMT, and then they see things, and then they realize, our university is not necessarily the best in the world, because every university
thinks they are.
No, and when you start to explain about exchange programs, when you do that at home, for them, developing country, because this is still the word that they are using, but then when they visit UMT, and at the end they have to say they have better facilities than our university, more modern, better equipped. But you have to keep going. It's not something that will not help with just an email.
You are getting old with this, no? Right?
I've lost many years.
John,
Yeah,
what can you about Stirling? Come on.
I think that it can be a problem that they're a little bit blinkered on international issues. But I think it's been getting better, because the policy generally has been towards, they've now been told by government or others they've got to be more international. And I think there's been a lot of programs going on to try to encourage more internationalism. So I think there's a fairly positive attitude. Doesn't always follow through in the funding and other issues, but broadly speaking, there is a lot of emphasis on trying to recruit at least. I think probably where it's getting more difficult is getting broad support because they want to try and find, some big projects which are kind of big flagship projects and just support those, and trying to say, well, no, we need to be involved in a lot of different places is quite difficult.
I agree that we have seen that evolution, say, over the past 10 years, but I'm less optimistic about what we see happening now in a number of our European universities, the nationalism. And for example, I have the greatest difficulty to talk about China. And it's all on wrong perceptions. It's wrong perceptions. But the nationalistic parties or the...
Not a good example.
About Brexit.
No, not a good example. But this is you are absolutely right. This is something which makes really your book makes me worried.
In the last few weeks, I've been talking about with friends, namely with those that are economists, talking about mobility and about globalization. So I've been learning a bit because I'm not economist, but I've been talking with others, and I was told that globalization got a backlash. So it's not growing the same speed that it was growing in the past, and the reason is that some governments found that globalization was making some countries to get more money and some countries losing money. So what is happening at the moment is that there's a new balance, a new equilibrium, a new balance between the nations and between the globalization in the world. So it's expected that in the future, so it's going to be back a bit, so then it will go up in a more balanced way, so there's no winners and losers. And I think that mobility might is feeling this consequence. But I'm not an economist, but that's what I got from.
I think there is a bit of an attitude at our university that that we're a very good place for people to come to. Everybody will want to come to our place, but they don't see the value in our students so much going out everywhere else, and so that's a problem.
I was going to say I can completely relate to that experience. Mobility for all staff and students to mobility incoming for prepaid students. And I think the situation might be a bit the same in Sterling.
Yeah, I think it's probably similar. That's certainly a driver for the bean counters at the top.
Yeah. I have no idea how our institute is going to attract the kind of people that Sterling attracts, because there's no marketing being done or anything, but that's another whole story.
It's called like a backlash, something like going back a bit. But we are not economists, so it's not our fault what's happening. But it seems that politicians and economists want a new. No, the trade, and it's related also with the trade between the nations. And,
but for aquaculture, I think we just need more international cooperation.
It's even a higher priority for Europe towards Asia than Asia towards Europe. 10 years ago, it was different. 10 years ago, it was Asia that had to come to Europe and gain the expertise. They have very qualified institutions in Asia. And I think it is, for us in Europe, crucial to have a good finger on the pulse on what is happening in Asia, not only for the benefit of the scientific development, but even for industry. I'm repeating all the time, European industry should be much more proactive in Asia. This is where the future is.
And if you consider the customers in Europe, we can have a big impact on how they are producing their products. Yeah, we can communicate it, and this is a very important point. Yeah.
This is first time for me to the EURAS program. So do EURAS have any common group in Twitter or other? I think whatever is going on, any mobility need to update so that other can understand what is going on. So for the ICT, your question was, I think we need to make a group and update the news about the mobility or different program.
Right, it's my job now to sort of summarise all of the groups anyway to this on this particular session. But there's been a lot of commonality between the groups, as you might expect. I think that most of the issues that you brought up, others have brought up in one way or another. Probably the issues of language, gender, cultural differences and people adapting when they get into places has come up quite a few times. Access to opportunities for funding, of course, has come up quite a few times. Anything else? Expectations. Expectation management came up. Yeah, I can't see anything else beyond that really. I'll try and dig out the solutions that we'll find because they're probably going to be the most useful things. Okay, good. Thank you very much for your participation and enjoy.